Welcome to the IT Career Energizer podcast. For anyone who wants to build and grow a career in IT, develop and improve your strengths and skills, be inspired and motivated by the successes of others, manage your career progression, and achieve your IT career goals. And now, your host, Phil Burgess.
Welcome to the 166th episode of the IT Career Energizer podcast. My guest on today's show is a senior analyst at Constellation Research. He is a recognized industry expert on a variety of topics, including digital transformation, social collaboration, and online business models. And in 2015, he was identified as one of the top 20 people most mentioned by IT leaders. So I'm delighted to welcome Dion Hinchliffe to the show.
Well, thank you, Phil. Appreciate you having me.
Obviously, that was a very brief introduction. It'd be quite interesting to hear a little bit about some of the other things you've been doing, particularly recently.
Well, it's also might be useful to gain perspective on kind of where I started, which was I've always worked in large projects or large IT strategies, even when I was first starting out, typically reporting up to the CIO. For a while, I was chief architect for Rowe Price investments as quite a young man, and that was a real crucible that teaches you a lot about applying technology to business and navigating political waters and making things very successful when there's a lot of different priorities and different views on how things get done. I also did a stint as a lead architect for the Missile Defense Agency on their Advanced Battle Manager program. That's one of the largest IT projects in the world, and you learn a great deal on how to realize change and building leadership skills. And actually, I recommend anyone go through some government IT project because you learn so much about how to work effectively in bureaucracy with red tape, with very, very complicated requirements. And everything gets much easier if you can survive something like that. So more recently, I work primarily with our CIO audience, also chief digital officers, chief customer officers, chief marketing officers. But everybody is basically applying technology strategically to transform their business, to modernize it, to do all the things that everyone's got to do to catch up to the digital leaders. So I spend a lot of time developing strategies and then making sure they're successful. These are digital strategies I'm talking about. So everything from go-to-market to how do I design, build, and execute a digital transformation program? How do I overhaul my IT landscape? How do I reduce that? So all the big issues, the large moving pieces on the chessboard that a CIO has to worry about or a C-level leader has to worry about is where I'm spending almost all my time right now. I write about it. I speak about it. I advise on it. I do a lot of CIO workshops. So I really get to peer inside of organizations and kind of see how the sausage is being made or not. And I get to go back a few months or a few years after my recommendations and see how they turned out. So that's actually usually the most valuable part of what I do, which is learning about what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, so that must be interesting to find out when you go back and see how they progressed and understand what impact you've made in terms of what they've done and where they are.
Absolutely, and it's gratifying when it works out. I've been very fortunate that there's value in what I've advised, and sometimes what they tried didn't work out, and they move on. And one of the big lessons is strategies can get so far out ahead of reality of execution that it's very easy to develop a strategy that takes years to execute, right? And so even if I check back a year later, you find that they haven't gotten very far yet.
Yes.
And we're in a fascinating business, but these days that's not, moving that slowly is no longer acceptable. Speed is really the biggest issue right now that IT departments and technical teams are having to cope with.
You also mentioned your speaking and blogging and writing. Is that something you do to sort of help other people understand the challenges that are out there and the sort of technologies that are available to them?
I do. I mean, or I like to call myself as a storyteller because what's missing really in our business, because IT has for most organizations such a competitive implication, is we don't really share what works and what doesn't very well. We don't want anyone to know that often. So we tend to be very secretive, and even our case studies tend to be very high level, right? So you kind of hydroplane over the top of all this, and you don't really know how they got something hard done or what key lessons they learned. And I go to conferences for a living, right? So I go to, 50, 60 events a year and have for the last 15 years. And so I'm always going to the customer stories, and they tend to be very bland and not helpful. And so what I try to do is, if you've read my stuff, it's all pretty in-depth and long form, because we're trying to get down to the stuff that actually matters. How do you really do this? What are the moving pieces? Those types of things.
So presumably you get some good feedback on that as well, because obviously, as you say, not a lot of companies tend to share what they do and the results they're getting.
Yeah, and also the value in writing, and also if you have read my work, you see that I always include diagrams and pictures. Both of those really help me understand it too. Organizing your thoughts and writing them down and creating visuals that convey that really help you as well. And you see in my visuals, almost everything I write includes my diagrams. That skill was developed as an IT architect when I had to go and ask for a lot of money. Sometimes we'd come back and realize we had to do a major architectural upgrade, and it's very difficult to go into a CIO's office or sometimes up to the boardroom and ask for millions of dollars for things they can't possibly understand or visualize. And so I discovered that one really great picture, makes it real for them, right? And it looks like that, a PowerPoint slide with just a few words on it won't raise $5 million, but a beautiful picture of what you're trying to do and what it will create, they can buy into that. That is an absolutely key skill. So learn how to write this all down, learn how to create the pictures that bring this to life in your stakeholders' heads, and you can accomplish a lot.
So Dion, can you share a career tip with the IT Career Energizer audience, one they may not know and perhaps should?
Well, the one that took me longer to learn than I should have is that it's absolutely critical. It's a critical skill to be able to put yourself in your customer's place. And is often, we work with business users typically who are they're unfamiliar with our terminology, they're unfamiliar with technology. They're going through it for the first time. You may have gone through a technology rollout or an application development effort many dozens of times, but it's usually the first time for them. And even if they've done it before, it's been a while. And so much miscommunication and missed expectations often come out of that gap where you're really the professional, and your bedside manner really matters a lot, trying to really empathize with where they are and their understanding and how you're holding everything, holding all the cards, right? And their future and how their department or division is going to run after this technology is rolled out. It's usually very impactful for how they get business done. And so I found it very useful to try and really think about where they're coming from, that they don't know anything about what goes on inside the IT department, or how it works, or all the experience that we've had, and educating them and holding their hand and all that, and that whole empathy piece is so key. And when I really learned to do that, I had much more success in terms of being able to engage effectively with stakeholders, convince them to take the risks I felt that they should take and understand them, to believe in us and support us as much as they could, especially when things go wrong or you have to go back and ask for more money. When you have all of that in place and they really sense that you're trying to understand those things, it really makes a difference.
Is there anything in particular that you do to enable yourself to be in their shoes, as it were?
I try and visualize what their job is like. So I try to think about what they do and what they've seen, because I know they've only seen a small fraction typically of the IT landscape. I think about what recent experiences they must have gone through, if I know recent rollouts or other things that have happened, because they're trying to do the same thing, figure out how this is going to go. So they're thinking about all the experiences they've had with the IT department. And so just really kind of doing that creative visualization can help a lot.
So Dion, can you perhaps tell us about your worst IT career moment and what you learned from that experience?
Well, I think the worst moments in IT tend to be either when the project doesn't go well, or when you have to deal with the staff that aren't working out, right? And that probably you're not going to be able to remediate that. And so I think plenty of people have spoken about IT project failure, but I think really the hardest thing is being able to work with your staff and be able to let them go, and making that decision is one of the toughest things. And I recall we used to run a boutique consulting firm that did what we extensively called IT project rescue. It was really, we call it performance optimization. And we charged a lot, and we hired the best people we could find to turn these projects around. And over the first time we let our one of our most senior people go in by themselves, we just couldn't be there to start the engagement. We got a call later on from the client said it just wasn't going to be a good fit. We'd never, of all the years we've been running that business, we had never had anyone send someone back, especially not one of our best people. And it was very difficult. It was the toughest thing I ever had to do, to tell that person that they just weren't cutting it, and that we couldn't use their services anymore. And I find that those moments typically are always the hardest ones, where you have to, especially if you know they're otherwise good people, but it's just not going to fit the situation, and tell them that they don't have work anymore. They're not good enough. And you can't really even say that.
A difficult conversation to have.
Yes, those are the worst ones.
So moving away from your worst moment, can you perhaps tell us about your IT career highlight or greatest success?
Yeah, for a while. So I worked on a number of government projects, and a lot of them are not ones I can talk about the actual project itself, but one was a very large government project that wanted to adopt agile methods, but had never, like all government projects, had hundreds of people involved in it. And if you know anything about agile methods or agile processes, they're designed for small teams. They're not designed to take a vast government project agile. Nevertheless, we felt, as we were agile coaches, we felt that it could still benefit from a lot of it. And so what we did was we rethought agile methods to figure out how would you take a large distributed team and apply the methods and be able to do the types of stand-ups and be able to do user stories and take into fast feedback loops, ship a code every week and show it to customers and do those things, even though it was a very distributed team. And we learned a lot, and we had a lot of hard knocks, but we actually were able to apply a lot of the agile ideas and concepts effectively in the processes, and we greatly sped them up. And enough that I would still say the effort became fairly agile. I was doing a lot of things, getting frequently shipping working software, prioritizing the user stories, showing stuff to the customer all the time. And it was slower than any agile team ever would be, but it was certainly much faster. And so it was taking this large government project and making it much more agile. And for a while, because I was active quite a bit in the agile community, we were one of the largest, basically quasi-agile projects in the world for a while. Now, since then, they've done things like that, much larger. But yeah, so it really felt great. We were doing something really advancing the state of the art, and what then was the vanguard of new development processes.
What excites you about the future of the IT industry and careers in IT in particular?
I think it's the most exciting time to be in IT ever. Even we have tremendous challenges. Most large companies are struggling under huge amounts of technical debt and legacy systems, what we call legacy mountain, that they're kind of chained to, and 90% of the budget gets sucked into doing that. And no one wants to be a drone just maintaining that, right? You want to go out creating new things. Well, the budgets are increasing to do that. And technology spend for technology is increasing across the organization, not just in IT. And people going into IT today are not going to be stuck as drones in the back office unless they want to be. They can come out and really shape the future of the digital experience for the company, the digital products and services, and really kind of involved in that, what we call digital transformation, which is one of the most exciting domains. And most businesses are only very incomplete in their efforts in doing that. And so for the next 5 or 10 years, that's what they're going to be spending on. And investments are up, not necessarily in IT, which is interesting. IT budget's still only growing, small single digits, but technology spend is way up across the organization. So if you want to do a cross-disciplinary technology specialty where you're working with marketing and the customer team and the chief digital officer, and then leveraging everything in IT and applying AI and analytics and data science, it's a very exciting time to do all this.
So why do you think that sort of shift from that sort of predominantly maintenance function and to more of a change delivery function has taken place? What are the reasons for that?
Well, because if you don't digitize your organization, you simply won't survive. That's the data. The one that's always bandied about is most of the companies from the year 2000 are gone. And the number one reason is failure to adapt to technology conditions, basically not modernizing their products and services. Over 60%, I think it's closing on 70% of those organizations are gone.
So we're going to go into the reveal round now. We're going to find out a little bit more about you and the way you think. You ready for this?
I am.
So what first attracted you to a career in IT?
Well, it's where I could have a job where I'd be working primarily with creating things with technology. I learned to program when I was 11 years old, and I realized, with a computer, you can basically create your own universe with its own rules, and it's a whole universe unto itself. That's very fulfilling for those who like to be able to do that sort of thing. And the only way you can really get access to a lot of budget and to be able to create a lot of those things is to go into a business and work in the technology department, which is what I typically did all too often as a consultant.
And what is the best career advice you've ever received?
Probably that in IT, we tend to get pretty complacent, and we like to gravitate towards the technologies and platforms that we know so well. But the best advice I ever received was being told to push myself out of my comfort zone on a regular basis. Try new things, even if they don't even necessarily seem related to IT. But that's when we learn the most, right? So especially in IT, we'd like to be experts in what we're doing and have mastery of the technologies. But it's when we're doing something new we don't know well, that's when we grow. And so I often, to this day, push myself into new things to learn them and to find out what they're about. And it really broadens your worldview, builds your skill set. And so if you're feeling really comfortable, you might be doing something wrong. You might want to think about that. That's my favorite advice I've received.
Do you feel you've developed that into a habit? Is that something you sort of deliberately go out and do?
You can almost argue, for those that know me and follow my work, that I'm a novelty seeker as a result of that advice. Even I really go out there looking for new and exciting things that have potential. And that's what I talk about. That's what I write about, is what's new, what's exciting, why does it matter, how do you think about it, how do you apply it?
Yeah.
And so I think I've really taken that to heart, I think.
And on the flip side of that, what is the worst career advice you've ever received?
The worst career advice I'd ever received is, I hate to say it, but it was from my father, who was not a big fan of technology. And he had seen how in the 50s and 60s there was a big run-up in the engineering business. And he said, son, I really worried about you going into the technology business. I saw what happened to it when there was a huge glut of engineers in the world. And he was worried about unemployment. And, I tried to convince him. I said, Dad, this technology thing is going to be probably the biggest thing that's ever happened to the human race. I'm not worried about it. And so far, that's the case. Our industry consistently and stubbornly has negative unemployment and will for the foreseeable future.
And if you were to begin your career again in today's world, what would you do?
I would probably learn more about business than I did. I ended up having to learn a great deal about it. And I always felt like I'm going to learn as little as I possibly can. And so I could focus on, the very large and complicated domains of technology. Most people don't understand how complicated IT is. But on the business side, most technology people don't understand how that world either. And I would have studied business more quite a bit earlier. And I can almost guarantee you would have gone farther.
And what career objectives are you currently focusing on?
I've really moved into taking my writing and I want to write more books. I've written 2 books and edited a few. And in doing so, it's always very rewarding. It's an enormously difficult task and hugely challenging to carve out the time for. But it's also the most rewarding thing. So my plan is for the rest of my career, I'd like to publish 3 or 4 really notable books that really kind of unpack everything that I've learned in my career in specific areas, the next one being on digital transformation.
Yeah, that's a great objective, definitely. And what's the number one non-technical skill that has helped you in your career so far?
Almost certainly people skills. IT folks are famously not very good on that. And I was simply forced to. I can't say I was very different from the typical old school, we now look as kind of an old school data processing person who's in the back working with the tape machine and the PDP-11 and all of that, and never talk to a customer. Well, you have to in order to be able to do that. Is the people skills have been my number one. Developing those early because of having any at all created such additional positive results that I very quickly ended up realizing that's one of the most important things.
Yeah, no, definitely is. Communication skills, people skills, as you say. Yeah, it's absolutely key now, isn't it? I think as well with the change in the way that IT is now delivered as well, it's far closer to the end user. That is so important.
Yep, exactly right.
And what do you do to keep your own career energized?
Well, unfortunately, that's mostly a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're always looking at exploring new things and tracking new things. So it's amazing as I maintain these lists over the years about all the new things you really have to investigate and learn about. And that list is as big as it's ever been. And if you're really excited about new things, maintaining those types of lists and what are the things I want to go look at and what I want to learn, I want to try to use. I try and use everything I read about. I try to actually get hands-on with it. You learn so much more that way. And I get excited about that. It's when I'm having to do all of the overhead, all the things that aren't related to that. That's more tedious. And I say, really try and, it's like the 4-hour work week. Tim Ferriss is, if you only spend 4 hours a week doing what you really love, you're actually in luck. So,
yep. And what do you do away from technology in your spare time?
Well, I recently, even though I'm nearly 50, I had twins, boy-girl twins. And
right. Congratulations.
Thank you. They keep me extraordinarily busy. And when I'm not doing that, I travel for a living, so I get to go to see exciting places, and I make 360-degree movies and fly my drone around. I collect wine, and before the kids were born, I was a climber, a technical rock climber. So I hope to get back to that when they get a little older.
And Dion, can you share a parting piece of career advice with the IT Career Energizer audience?
One of my biggest additional lessons, other than the ones we talked about here, is really learning to set your information, your knowledge free. It used to be that as an IT expert, you used to be the gatekeeper. People would have to come to you because you were the expert on this system or how something worked or some piece of technology. And that gave you a lot of power. And now it's so much more powerful to set that free to work for you, right? So to write about it, to share the knowledge, to get on your chat system, your enterprise social network, and really engage. And it actually gives you far more power because your knowledge is now working for you 24 hours a day for the rest of the time within the organization. And people now know to come to you for even more, right? And not only that, but it offloads you from having to answer all those questions all the time. So I really say set your information free, make it work for you. It makes you so much more valuable in the organization, more visible. And it's really good for your career to do that. So I advise share and share.
Yeah, very much so. And finally, what's the best way we can find out more about you and connect with you?
Well, you can track what I'm doing on Twitter at D Hinchliffe. That's DHINCHCLIFFE. Easily found on Google as well. And DionHinchliffe.com, as well as on ZDNet.
Dion, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been great chatting with you.
Yes, thanks so much, Phil. Appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening in to today's episode and to my guest career tips, advice, and experiences. You'll find a show notes page for today's episode on the IT Career Energizer website, which will be itcareerenergizer.com/e and then the number of today's episode. And a quick reminder that the show has now 3 episodes every week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So make sure that you are subscribed to the show to get new episodes automatically downloaded. Also, don't forget to join the IT Career Energizer Community Facebook group. You'll get to engage with other like-minded people, get to find out more about upcoming guests and other episodes, and can get involved in the future direction of the podcast. It really is a great pleasure to be able to talk to so many inspirational people from across the industry and to be able to share their stories and advice with you. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you're not growing your career, you're slowing your career.
Thanks for listening to the IT Career Energizer podcast. To find out more about building a successful career in IT, visit itcareerenergizer.com.